Highway to the stage.
I didn't get to pick my own entrance song, but that's okay. My name is Michael Cady. I'm our Chief Commercial Officer.
My name is Brennan Bailey. I'm our Chief Product Officer.
In October of 2022, we stood at Technovations, and for the first time, we released to the market the only product focused on carrier identity. What we said was that we were going to focus on 3 design principles in serving the market on carrier identity. That's reducing total surface area of risk, making all of our customers the hardest target, and then dividing the world between good guys and bad guys. And what we're going to tell you today is more of how we drill in on those design principles. What we saw initially is that we were able to protect a broker's network really well, but what changed was there are multiple facets of identity management, and it's everywhere that a broker might communicate with a carrier. So we began thinking about the communication channels, email, VoIP, and then specifically at the load level, right? And so what Brennan's going to do is share how we've essentially closed the loop on compliance. And there's really 2 things we want to accomplish. One, we want to help brokers be more secure, but we also want to boost productivity. We're going to go through some of those products and how we accomplish that.
So we're going to begin with Highway for email. One veteran of this business, somebody who's established 3 successful brokerages, told us that his own loss events occurred when some bad actor or criminal was reaching out or reaching into their own organization. And so Highway for email, and specifically in the form of Highway for Outlook, is something that we released many months ago, some of you may remember this. We're very proud now to have a partnership with Front so that customers who are on Front can have emails from criminals automatically quarantined in their organization so that they're not even looked at by a carrier rep. And most recently, we've released Highway for Gmail so that folks on Google can enjoy the same functionality. Yesterday, in the inboxes of our customers were 5,436 emails that landed who were from a criminal attempting to spoof the identity of a real carrier. These are the figures we see every single day. I ran the numbers this morning. The next one I want to talk about is Highway for VoIP. Michael talked about the need to reduce the surface area of risk across the organization. And so as we were working with customers, this was an attack vector that we identified, which were your phone lines. And what we explored and what we uncovered as we were exploring these problems with customers is we would ask to review some of the call data. Hey, who is it that's calling you? And we would look at the individual phone numbers over a period of time. And what we observed was that 3 to 9% of all inbound phone calls coming into our organizations were from criminals. 3 to 9%. Yesterday, for one of our customers who is using Highway for VoIP currently, yesterday, that customer received 17 phone calls from a party who was actually a third-party dispatch service, not a carrier, a third-party dispatch service. They received 23 phone calls from a phone number that had been individually reported for fraud, and that same customer received 36 phone calls from a phone number that was associated to a carrier that had been reported for fraud. Every one of those phone calls was automatically routed to a dead end, so that there was nobody spending time talking with the criminal. Now I want to talk about LoadLock. LoadLock is the preeminent solution for end-to-end load protection. Now this is a product that we released into beta many months ago, and what we've done is we've devoted hundreds of development hours with dozens of customers across hundreds of thousands of loads to drive down the noise of alerts that we can generate and drive up the signal. And we do this in the form of what we call load lock alerts, so that your folks are only having to respond to what we call exceptions. We're going to generate an alert and notify you of something that may be occurring on one of your loads. I want to talk about the outcome. And the outcome is that more than 5 million loads under the protection of LoadLock have been covered without a single instance of strategic theft. So this morning I want to hit 3 of the most common LoadLock alerts that we may generate, beginning with what we call an overbooked carrier. Now everybody in this room is smart enough to know not to give more than 1 load to one truck carrier on one day, right? But what you can't know is if the one one truck carrier that you get a load to is also covering a load for 4 other brokers sitting in this room. And this is what we call an overbooked carrier. Now, yesterday, there were 111 instances that we identified where a load had been given to a carrier who had overbooked their capacity. And when this occurs, we're going to initiate, or we're going to generate what we call a load lock alert to send this to you so that you can reassign that load to another carrier and reevaluate your relationship with that carrier. The next one is what we call an out-of-range carrier. An out-of-range carrier is simply due to pick up a load within a few hours, and yet has no chance of making it for pickup. I was investigating an incident in my hotel room last night. There was a load due to be picked up in San Diego within a matter of hours, and the nearest power unit belonging to that carrier was 1,550 miles away in Leavenworth, Kansas. We call this an out-of-range carrier. We see it every day. And the last one is what we call an email that's been reported for fraud. And so many of us have policies and procedures, to Bryce's point, for who to send our rate confirmations to. And what Highway will do, without initiating any new process or asking for any new effort or discipline from your own team members, is we'll automatically audit the recipients of all of your rate confirmations. So yesterday, we observed 99 instances where a load had been covered with a rate confirmation that had actually been sent to a third-party dispatch service or to an email address belonging to a criminal who was attempting to spoof the email address of a real carrier. And I'll wrap up with this, which is the hardest one of all. How do you cover freight that's being hauled out of California that needs to be carbon compliant, that belongs to a high-tech shipper? How do you cover that freight and make sure that that carrier who's going to cover it doesn't have an exclusion for electronics buried on page 94 of its motor truck cargo policy? Come to our booth and we'd love to explain how.